What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the No Hedging Podcast, College Football Playoff Edition. All right, normally we talk, NFL, NBA, but today we're going to be talking about the NCAA College Football Playoff picture. You got number 1 Michigan, you got number 2 Washington, number 3 Texas, and the controversial number 4 spot Alabama, man. But before we get into it, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like, comment your thoughts below. I am your host, Ty the Jet. I got my guy here, Mr.
16.
Yes, sir.
The legendary GOAT.
So let's go ahead and get into it, man. So what are your thoughts about, the rankings 1 through 4 as we, enter the playoffs?
My thoughts initially is I think the system is trash. You got a bunch of guys in a room, and we just decide who's the strong team, who's the not so strong team. They're caught up on the whole tradition of it. I've seen multiple people suggest an emergency playoff.
Yeah.
Which made probably the most sense if you look at it. You got an undefeated team that's not in the top 4.
Right.
You got a team that was just number 1 that have dropped down to 6 after 1 loss. But you have 2 teams that have lost in there above those teams. Mm-hmm. Texas beating Alabama puts them above Alabama, which I get that. But I also understand that they didn't rank Florida because of the injury to Jordan Travis.
Florida State, yeah.
Florida State. But they're still undefeated. So there's still always that argument. UGA only lost 1 game in 3 years. Right. So yeah, I have way more thoughts about that UGA Alabama game, but that's my first initial thoughts of it's trash. It's trash, bro. Make a playoff.
I don't think it's fair. But life is not fair, right? So
it's not.
I do think that these teams are best suited for the playoffs.
Let me ask you this.
Competition-wise.
Let me ask you this. They said that because it's a Power 5 conference, it makes them – essentially we're saying that makes them eligible, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not acknowledging the fact of, okay, what are the top conferences? Like, the SEC is still a much more dominant conference
historically,
yeah, than the other conferences.
This year, no,
not necessarily. Yeah. But even this year, right? You still have multiple teams from the SEC who are top ranked teams. Mm-hmm. So if I'm looking at it on paper and I'm looking at the top ranked teams, I'm like, okay, SEC teams are clearly the more dominant conference, even if it's not as dominant as it's been in other years. But which conference is more dominant? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm still not seeing it. Maybe you can clear that up for me.
Well, the ACC, in regards to Florida State, the ACC record against the SEC is 6-4 this year. So they've been beating the SEC this year. And then you can also argue that the Pac-12 has been better than the SEC this year as well because of all the ranked teams they've had in the top 25 AP. You know what I'm saying?
Who are they playing?
I understand that. But I understand that. And that's still always going to be the argument because that's the same argument goes for the SEC. SEC always has cupcake schedules until they play each other and until they meet in the championship game, right? So majority of the schedules for the SEC, your Alabamas and your Georgias, is always going to be cupcake. You know what I'm saying? That's always been the argument, and that's why they've been so dominant over the past, how many years? 10, 15 years.
But when they play against these other teams in the other conferences, we can see the difference.
Absolutely. In years past.
In the years past. Now, maybe, I could be wrong this season, maybe the other conferences will beat them, but getting into that.
Yeah, because now you got to implement, like now what's implemented now is the transfer portal. You know what I'm saying? Right. So that all plays a toll or plays a factor in why these other conferences are a little bit more competitive.
Okay, so getting into that, right? We have Michigan at number 1. Mm-hmm. We have Washington at number 2. Mm-hmm. Texas at number 3, the Longhorns. and Alabama at number 4 as it stands.
Mm-hmm.
As we alluded to, Alabama being there at 4 was controversial for multiple reasons. For one, because Florida State went undefeated.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That's crazy. Florida State undefeated. You undefeated Power 5 team. You win your conference title. I think you should punch your ticket in there. But it was flawed from the beginning because it's 5 freaking conferences, and then you only got 4 slots.
and then your logic to keep Georgia out of it, or to keep an SEC team out of it, is not the logic that you use to put this ACC team that went undefeated in it.
Right.
So that's flawed.
Right.
Then for 2, Alabama. First of all, the refs not reviewing the catch, right? Let's talk about that. Before halftime, it's 1 minute left, 59 seconds. What's Alabama's receiver? Isaiah catches the pass. Well, he doesn't really catch the pass. The ball scrapes against the ground.
Hits the turf, yep.
Hits the ground. They hop up. No booth review. Right? It's under 2 minutes. So that should come from up top, especially on a critical 4th down. They're like, I can't remember the exact yards. I think it was like 4th and 17. It was more than 10 yards, and they were on 4th down. So if it's a critical juncture at the game like this, you would think that there would be a booth review for a questionable catch.
Yeah.
They hop up, no review. Then Alabama comes down here and scores a touchdown before halftime. Then, after halftime, also, I believe, 4th down, there's a tackle in the backfield by UGA's defense. Man grabs him on his shoulders. They call it a horse collar. I guess they say his thumb is going around the collar. They call that a horse collar tackle. They get an automatic first down. They come down. They get 3 points off of that drive. So it's a 10-point swing in this game where they ultimately end up winning by 3. Now, to me, I know Alabama fans will argue that, hey, we won. We're better.
They were the better team that day.
Were they though?
They were.
Were they?
They were.
Were they?
They really were dominating the game for the most of the game.
How are you dominating and you win by 3?
The score doesn't. the final score doesn't tell the entire story of that game.
I agree because it's 10 points that shouldn't be on the board.
And you can say it both ways, right? You're saying it's a 10-point swing that went in Alabama's favor, that could have assisted Georgia. On the flip side of it, you're looking at the score as a 3-point win. The way I look at the game, I think Alabama was dominating Georgia on the run game. You know what I'm saying? They were doing very well on the run. And then in crucial moments, in the end of the game, Georgia had an opportunity.
But we talk about situational football.
Right. I get it. But the thing is, when you're playing the game, you're also playing against the refs as well. So the best way...
Why are we playing against the refs?
The best way to really win a game is to dominate in the as much as you can, where the ref doesn't determine the outcome of the game or have that much of an impact in the game.
Me and you talk about this a lot with, like, say, for example, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? We're talking about a team that is pretty solid most weeks, doesn't really dominate most games, but they play well in situational football. So if you need a critical 3rd down stop to cause a punt, Pittsburgh Steelers are one of those teams that'll get you that stop. And I felt like in that game, UGA was getting dominated by the run by Alabama. However, in situational football, where we need a stop, they played good football.
Not at the end. The last final drive, they had an opportunity, and what happened? Jalen Milroe escaped out the left-hand side and picked up about 15 yards, slid down, game over at that point.
Yeah, I mean...
You get a stop right there, you get yourself an opportunity to get the ball back and potentially score.
Yeah, I just felt like it was a lot of questionable things in there. I just felt like at least a booth review makes sense.
Yeah.
At such a critical juncture of the game, because I seen them do a booth review on a UGA catch that was obviously a catch. So why is it not both ways for both teams? However, that happened. That put Alabama in that spot, right?
Yep.
So now that we have to deal with this roll tide, they're going against Michigan.
Yep.
I would love to see Michigan beat the shit out of them for how they got into this game. However, I don't really feel like Michigan is equipped enough to beat that Alabama team.
I don't know. It's just Michigan is one of those teams like the way that they're built to run the football and play good defense. Like they're not going to air it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. I do believe that in order to beat Alabama, you have to be able to throw the football consistently. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the way Michigan has been built this season to run the football, control the clock, and to play good defense, like basically they try to constrict you throughout the game and just dominate you in the run game. But Alabama is built defensively to stop run, right, and to be aggressive in that aspect. So you have to beat Alabama by throwing the rock, and that's just what it is. When Georgia beat Alabama, last 2 years or whatever the case may be in those big games, you got to throw the ball. You know what I mean? You're not beating Alabama by just running it. So I think Alabama does have the edge on this, hence why Michigan was pissed off that Florida State didn't get in because they already know.
They could beat Florida State.
They could beat Florida State.
Jordan Travis.
Yeah, they could beat Florida State without Jordan Travis, and they already know that Alabama is going to be a problem. So, but Michigan, they got a lot of, emotional energy, like
they've been through a lot this season.
Yeah, given the Hardball situation,
they've been through a lot.
I think it'll be a good game, but I just think ultimately, Alabama kind of squeaks their way through it and beats them.
Okay,
Alabama can air it out too. Now Milroe, he'll throw it. He's not an efficient passer, but he'll throw that motherfucker down the field and he'll run around. So he'll throw it deep now.
yeah. He don't mind launching.
Yeah.
So what about Washington versus Texas? What are your thoughts on Washington versus Texas?
So I watched a good bit of Washington games this season. Michael Penix, they have a solid.
He's nice.
Their offense is legit. They got a good running back. Actually, they got two good running backs. One is more of a bruiser. So if they need to get those physical yards and get, pounded towards the ends of games like they did against Oregon, they can do that, right? They have a good running back, and the receivers are top notch, man. They have 2, maybe 3 NFL receivers right now. Like these dudes can play in the NFL right now.
Right.
So obviously Penix is Penix, right? He's the potential Heisman candidate, right? So now on the defensive side with Washington, they do have a solid front, which they showed against Oregon. They were dominant up front. But Texas is different, right? I think they match up very well because they're similar, right? I think obviously Penix is a better quarterback than Quinn Ewers, but they do have offensive weapons as well, right? With Mitchell that they got that transfer from Georgia. They do have a good running back. Sanders, their tight end, he's a stud. And then defensively, Texas defensive front is legit. NFL players across the board, pretty much. So I think it's going to be a good matchup. I think Texas is probably going to be the more dominant team as far as in the trenches. But I think offensively, Washington can throw the ball across the field. But it's going to be a good matchup. I do like this matchup. If I had to say who I think will win this game, I would probably say Texas because they'll probably be a little bit more physical, be able to get to the quarterback. Their defensive line is is athletic, and they'll cause Penix problems. But Penix, he's a stud. He's accurate. He can throw it down the field.
It's the reason why he's a Heisman candidate.
It's crazy.
So, I guess my other final question out of that would be, out of these 4, with Washington going against Texas, if you're thinking Texas would win and you're thinking Alabama would beat Michigan, Texas has beat Alabama.
It's a rematch, yep.
It's a rematch, and Texas beat Alabama this season.
Yep, early.
So, do you think Alabama, with that month off that they're going to end up getting in between that game, do you think Nick Saban comes up with a genius-level football plan for Texas in this rematch, or do you think Texas kind of does what they did beforehand?
The way that this stuff works, if you get beat by one team early, or you get beat by
losing later.
Like I'm saying, if you get beat first, and you get a chance to play him again, chances are you'll probably win that next matchup, right? The odds of beating the same team twice is pretty hard, especially you talking about a Nick Saban Alabama team who is in the big games, in the big moments, right? Now, this matchup is like Milroe got better over the course of the season.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The first time they played each other, Milroe, he had some issues. He actually got benched a game after that or whatever the case may be throughout the season. But as the season progressed, he started getting better. They end up, winning more games, beating better teams, all that,
right.
all this and that. So I think now if they were to match up again in the national championship, I think Alabama would beat them. I think it would probably be close as well, but I think Alabama, in these moments, in this situation, the stage is going to be the team to win and prove that they're, the dominant team in the SEC, not newcomer Texas.
Right. And unfortunately, I'm inclined to agree with you on this because I certainly don't want to hear a whole nother calendar year of full tide. But it's looking like that's the way it's set up.
Yeah, that's the way it's set up.
Looking like Nick Saban, you cried enough tears about UGA beating your ass a couple years, so you look like you're getting your wish.
Yeah, he's back on top again. I think Alabama Crimson Tide or the national championships once again.
Yeah, man. So I mean, you guys heard it here, man. We wanted to have a discussion about this controversial college football playoff that's coming up, but it is set now, and this is where we at. The stage is set, so we're gonna see what happens. I hope Alabama gets locked out of the locker rooms, can't make it, get DQ'd, don't even get to play. Put Michigan in there. I don't give a damn. But it is what it is.
It is what it is, man.
So, with that being said, y'all keep staying tuned. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Of course, we're going to get back to this NFL action because we're in the thick of the action over there, too.
Oh, yeah.
So, we got a lot to talk about. Some in-season tournament. If you're a sports fan, there's a lot to love right now. You got in-season quarterfinals going on. You got college football. You got NFL. People trying to make the playoffs. We got injuries. So much to talk about.
Wives and girlfriends are upset right now.
No time. But yeah, man, y'all stay tuned. Keep showing us love so we can show it right back.
Until next time, peace.